Hi, everyone, and welcome to Foundry's Tech Buyer Insights, a webcast dedicated to tech marketers. Today, we are going to review our new data and analytics research insights and discuss how Foundry can help connect you to data-driven decision makers. I'm Andrea D'Amato. I'm CRO of Americas for Foundry. Today, I have John Gallant, Enterprise Consulting Director at Foundry. Welcome, John.
Glad to be here.
Look forward to the conversation. This particular study that we're going to hone in on, the data and analytics study, it's in its 6th year, and it was conducted in the late spring. We released the results in June. I want to point out that out of the 872 respondents, they all have some variation of projects going on around data. So really relevant to what we're going to discuss today. And I think, John, if you could take us at a top level first, what are you seeing around those initiatives? What are the enterprise buying plans in general?
So, Andrea, happy to have the opportunity to do this. And what I want to say is, in addition to the data and analytics study, we're also including some information from our annual State of the CIO survey, where it's relevant, and some information from our role and influence study that talks about the buying process and what kinds of content people use in the buying process for data and analytics products. And I think this is really timely because, as we see from the survey, so many companies are involved in these data-driven initiatives right now, meaning they're trying to get more value out of the data. They're trying to increase profit, create new products and services, drive innovation in their organization through the skillful use of their data and analytics. At a high level, when we look at the State of the CIO survey, for example, we see that data and analytics is the #2 technology initiative that was expected to drive the most investment this year. It follows only cybersecurity. Unfortunately, we see cybersecurity at the top of almost every list of questions that we ask. And we also see that data science and analytics skills are among the top 3 tech-related skills that CIOs were planning to hire this year. Really in demand, and we'll talk about the challenges of finding those folks. What we saw in the data and analytics research was almost 100%. 85% of the companies say organizations have either already deployed or they have data-driven projects on their roadmap. So this is huge activity going on in this area. And one of the things that I found very interesting in that is, in our role and influence survey, we see that these buyers, these folks who are involved in these initiatives, very open to new vendors. In fact, 54% of them said that they would look at a new vendor as they pursued these projects, which I think is really something to see. 66%, 2/3 of them say that over the past 3 years, the analysis and collection of data, being more effective at that, fundamentally changed the way they're doing business. And 88% say over the next 3 years, it will continue to do that. It will have a big, big impact. And almost 2/3, 64% say that, like many things during the pandemic, data and analytics strategy was accelerated by the pandemic. We really needed to pivot, thrive, and survive. Data and analytics helped us do that.
Okay, so that kind of begs the next question. Well, what's driving these initiatives, these data and analytics initiatives? And I think even one of the just equally important questions is, what's getting in the way of success? What are the roadblocks?
Yeah, and the answer to both of those questions is lots. So there's lots driving it. Really depends on the vertical, depends on the company. And lots that gets in the way, and we'll talk about that. But we see one of these things, the top thing, and I'm hearing this from lots of CIOs, improve, automate internal business processes. And that also applies as well to IT operations and automating IT operations. Because it's so hard to find people, because it's so hard to retain people, this automation of business processes and IT operations is a huge area where analytics is playing a role. How do we do this more effectively? We also see many things related to customer engagement, customer service, customer journey, understanding customers and getting better insights into how to engage them, what they're doing, what they're buying, what we could do better for them. We also see that increasingly with employee experience and employee productivity as well. So as we've shifted to this hybrid work model, people are looking at, how's this working? What can we do more effectively? But we see things like improving existing products, developing new products, innovating faster, working on security. So we have this massive security information that's generated every day We need tools to analyze that. AI can play a big role in that. So there's many, many different reasons that companies are pursuing these projects. But when we talk about what gets in the way of these projects, lack of appropriate skill sets. This has been a problem for years. It's exacerbated not only because more people are working on these projects, but because the demand for these skills has broadened across virtually every industry. And there's not enough of these folks who have these skills. The other thing is lack of clearly articulated data strategy. We hear this at many, many companies, is we don't exactly know what we're trying to achieve here. Right? So that leads to confusion about what data we need. Do we have the right data? Is it cleaned up enough? All of those kinds of things. Lack of funding can be an issue. And in fact, in many cases, lack of understanding of how much do I need to fund? This is all new ground. What do I need? Right? So there's confusion about that as well. And again, up at the top of the list is demonstrating ROI for these initiatives. We hear this over and over. We'll do a pilot. We'll try some things. Did it work? Maybe we didn't have the clearest guidelines initially on what we were trying to achieve, right? So things like that can really get in the way of these data and analytics projects. And then specifically when people get into it, it's things like data quality. So we have data, in many cases it's a mess, right? We've got to clean that up. It's different across every division, names a customer a different thing, collects different information about a customer. Data integration, bringing all that data together so that we can work on it, right? Cloud can play a big role in that. Things like data lakes, data warehouses, we hear about these. And then this data preparation and transformation. Again, all part of that process of looking at the data. Do we have the right stuff? Is it in the right shape? What do we need to do to fix it?
And to your point, having a strategy, right, all around that is really key to start. You know, I want to come back to, I think it segues nicely into the next area here, which is around skills. As you mentioned, it's, you know, we've been doing these studies for years, right, especially around the CIO, and thinking about that skill set, skills missing, ideas around attracting talent, retaining talent, it's perennial.
Right.
And so I think specific to data and analytics, you know, where do enterprises need help, and what are the new skills that go along with that?
Yeah. So when I look at these slides that have to do with resources that the IT department needs, whether it's security resources, data and analytics resources, automation skill sets, cloud integration skill sets, those are problems for enterprises, but I always paint them as opportunities for marketers. Because A, these are things customers are telling you they need help with, so that's great knowledge in terms of refining, developing your own products. B, these are things you should be talking about in your marketing, how you help with these resource issues. So number one, we see we need help training people. So there's a lot of focus on democratizing analytics, getting the tools and the data into the hands of not just data experts who came from an Ivy League school, but people like you and I that manage departments and run teams. We want to analyze. We want insights into the business. So training on how to do that. Data management, the tools to do all the things we just talked about, which is find it, clean it up, get it integrated, get it where it needs to be. Big, big market, big problem. And we need the skills internally to do it. But the easier you make it as a marketer, the better. Data security. Are we handling our data well? Data governance as well. So we have people moving data all around to do different things with it. Are we actually keeping an eye on what people are doing? And are we doing things that are complying with regulations or specific laws in different countries? So people need those skills as well. And then it turns into all of those things specifically around machine learning and artificial intelligence skills. It turns into things like data science, all of those more advanced skills. We need those, but we need a lot more as well, right? And what we've seen, and this came out of discussions, and we actually asked about this in this most recent survey, we're seeing more and more companies creating centers of excellence around data and analytics. It's so important that we need to really look at this across the whole business, make sure that we have the skills available to all parts of the business, and make sure that we have some kind of central oversight of what are we doing with our data. So we see in our survey that over half the companies that are 1,000 plus in size are generating these centers of excellence around data and analytics, which I think shows just how important this is to companies today.
Yeah, I think that's a positive indicator,
Yeah,
right?
very much
For
so.
sure. So I think, from a marketer's point of view, the next area that we would be asking questions around is, okay, so what does the buy process look like? And how much money are we talking? What are the budgets
Right,
around these
yeah.
areas as well?
So we're going to look at data from two different surveys here, data and analytics survey that we talked about, but also this role and influence survey that we've been doing for an awfully long time as well. So we've been really tracking the buying process, the buying teams, and we'll talk about that. The good news, people are spending a lot of money on this. The average amount of money that will be spent on these data-driven initiatives over the next 12 months, 12.3 million. It's a lot of money. But even more important, that's up from last year. So it's a significant increase from last year. And more of the companies are saying that they're going to have that they're increasing the amount they're spending. So we saw 55% of the companies that responded said they're increasing their budget on this.
Wow.
That's up from 44%. So that's 11 percentage points, not 11%, but 11 percentage points, which is about a 25% increase in the number of people where the budgets are growing up.
Okay.
So where are they going to be? What are they looking for in the vendors? Well, the things they're looking for are things like data reporting and visualization capabilities. This goes back to the point I raised earlier about democratizing data and analytics, getting tools into the hands that help people like you and I report with it and visualize it, right? We've got to make that a lot easier. Security and governance, again, we see it coming up in our surveys so high, making sure that the data is secure, it's being used in the right ways by the right people. Integration, once again, we need those tools to integrate. Self-service analytics for non-technical users, right? So someone on the factory floor, so someone who's a salesperson, someone who's, their job isn't analyzing data, their job is doing their job, and they need those kinds of tools. And cloud deployment, help us understand what should we be doing up in the cloud and what should we be doing in our own environment. So a lot more that we need to learn there as well. So on this buying process, on this buying committee, there's 22 people on average involved
incredible.
at the enterprise level
Yeah.
on data and analytics purchases. And we'll talk about the different roles in there. On average, 12 folks from IT and 10 from line of business. That line of business involvement is so critical because line of business is saying, here's what we're trying to do. Can you help us do these things? In essence, those are the questions we want answered, which, if you do this well, will spawn more questions and continually to grow your analytics initiatives. So the buying process for these products and services tends to be about 6 months, a little longer, 6.7 months. And let's talk a little bit about who's involved in that process. This chart, I think, is one of the most important charts in the survey.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is, as you mentioned earlier, role and influence, which has, it's always, again, a perennial study for us. There's a lot of interest around it. You can slice and dice that data in many ways. This one is just really locked in on data and analytics specifically, right? And thinking about 22 people involved in that's a daunting number. And you've got basically half IT, which you may know how to speak to, but then when you talk line of B, that's a different language, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack here. Let's take a deeper look.
Yeah, and again, one of the things we'll say at the end is to really encourage people to pull the whole survey down because we're only showing portions of it now, and really to dig into this and some of the other content elements that we'll talk about. But what we see during this buying process is people coming in and out of the process depending on their role. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning of the process, when it's determining the business needs, we see the top 3 roles are the CIO, the CEO, and line of business management. And line of business management typically in that part of the process is going to bring in multiple people from their organization to talk about their needs. And this is a 2-part process. One, this is, here's what I know I need, how do we get to it? And then help me envision what else we can do. And I think that's a really important point to make to marketers because In some cases, people have a specific data and analytics project that they're pursuing, and they'll put out an RFP and they'll go through the sales process. What marketers also want to arm CIOs and other IT executives with is information that could launch another buying process. So help inspire them, show them what other companies are doing, show them other problems that are being solved through data and analytics, and that may launch a whole other initiative. They may not wait to hear from line of business, they may bring that to line of business. So really critical that you attack both vectors. Projects we know are in the works, inspire new projects. Once we get past that stage, it really gets into the stage of looking at the technology requirements, understanding them, evaluating products and services, and recommending and selecting vendors. And there we see that goes more into the IT management, IT professional realm. So these are the people who really understand what data management's involved, what analytics capabilities are really out there, and what really works well. So they're the ones who are going to be studying and understanding products and vendors. And what they're looking for is different, and we'll talk about that, but it's more around the lines of help me understand what you have and how it works, and then help me understand what it would take to integrate it, secure it, all of those kinds of things. When you get back to authorize and improve, that's really at the CFO, CIO, CEO level, with line of business management also involved in that. But you can see that there's a need to communicate with different folks at different points in that process.
I would think too, when we talk about the middle of that process, that evaluation, these folks that are truly in the area of IT and thinking about how does that integrate with what I already have? Is it going to blow something up that I currently have installed, right? Those are all considerations that I think are really important. And thinking about content, like how does your content map to that so that you're answering those or addressing 100%, those issues up front?
Because you're talking about the most valuable asset a company has, which is its data.
Right.
And people are going to take that very seriously and spend a lot of time looking for both a platform and tools. Mm-hmm. So increasingly we see folks who want to have an analytics platform where there's more integration between the different tools. Mm-hmm. It's not just I'm looking for an individual tool to do this. I may have a need for that, but in many cases I'm looking for a strategic partner that's going to help me with multiple aspects of this process. And as they do that, as these buyers are looking into it, we see the different kinds of content that they're looking for. So for example, product demo, product literature. Obviously that's more in the guts of the buying process. You don't start with that. But when we get to the point where we know what we need, we know what people are trying to do, I really need to know how your product works. I need to know the details of it. For us, it's really important to see that it's really important for product testing, reviews, opinions. Well, that's where we can play a role. We can be that objective voice of what are other people doing, how does this product work? We do testing and things like that. Right. They'll also look at analyst research as well. Mm-hmm. So that could be anything from IDC to Gartner to Forrester and places like that, and understanding how did this company and how do these products fit in a competitive landscape, strengths and weaknesses type thing. But there's many different types of content that play a role, and the key is to have them when people are ready as they go through that buying process.
So that's really interesting, understanding the content types, what they're looking toward, right? What formats, I guess we should say. But then what are the sources? Where are they actually going to get that information?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting array of sources that they work with. And you can see we put up a chart here that's a little bit of an eye chart, multicolored, but a lot of data. And again, that's why I encourage people to get this survey and spend some time with it. And we can even go over it with companies if they want to.
Absolutely.
If they want to dive deeper into it. But if you look at the top of this in sort of this darker gold color, you see a lot of it is from media and analyst sources. So sites like ours, CIO, InfoWorld, other sites, white papers from vendors and others, including the analyst firms, and webcasts and webinars are a really important part, like we're doing right now. But then if you look at the green, there's a lot of information they're looking for from vendors as well. So we talked about the vendor website, we talked about product demos, we talked about product literature, we talked about meetings at events, right? Mm-hmm. We could see in red that you're meeting with vendors at events, right? That's really important. We have a full slate of events, but there are many events out there. And those can be in person or those can be virtual events, and really the opportunity to spend some time learning more in that face-to-face fashion. And then peers, in the yellow there, peers play a big role in this. And I know this from my years of working with CIOs. They'll call each other up. What do you think of this company? What's been your experience with these products? And alerting these folks to who's using these products is critical. Case studies, connections between customers and other customers, super important as part of all of this. So what I'd say is, there's so much activity in this right now. What we know is that during periods of growth and adoption in technologies like data and analytics, a deep thirst for information. And we don't show it in the slides here, but we know how many content assets people will pull down, half dozen or more content assets when they're in those deep dive research into a technology area, as well as their connection with peers, as well as their attendance at events. So right now is a time to really make sure that you have information that helps at a high level for folks to understand possibilities. What could you be doing for your company with these capabilities? But then really helping them understand the products, who's using them, how they work, and how they integrate and secure in your environment. So,
Great.
with all that in mind,
Yes.
how do we help people make these connections? Because these buyers are busy, they're learning a lot, and they need to learn more.
Well, John, that's a great question. What a segue. Thank you for all the insights that you shared. One thing that keeps coming back to me is thinking about a content strategy, right? Not just creating content and hoping it resonates with all 22 of those decision makers, those stakeholders in an enterprise buying decision, but really aligning to the biggest care-abouts. And the pain points that how they work to solve. So that's a big job for marketers, and it's challenging to think about having enough content, the volume of content, and the right content at the right time. And so I want to just take a few minutes to talk a bit about what we're doing editorially. I think you teed it up nicely talking about CIO and InfoWorld in particular, and some of the connections that we're creating, and also some of the new products that Foundry's innovating in this space. So let's start with editorial. So CIO and InfoWorld, they're both different in the sense that they're looking at technology through a different lens, right? So CIO absolutely focused on senior IT, senior business decision makers who care about technology, and the topics that you see there that align are BI, analytics, cloud, artificial intelligence, et cetera. Those are common areas that CIO is covering on a regular basis, and then for InfoWorld, it's just as important, but it's looking at it from a different viewpoint, right? So it's around a deeper dive around the technology that matters around data, right? So some absolutely relevant to different stakeholders in the buying committee. And when I think about this part, actually is really exciting for me because we track this on a regular basis, which is around keywords, right? So with keywords, this is just really of the moment, a poll that we did of July 18th, and we looked at the top terms. I swear we did not rig this for this session, but you can take a look there at the top 5, and it's all tied to data and analytics, right? And the one that really resonates with me, just because it's newer, is around Chief Analytics Officer.
Right.
A new area, newer title. Chief Data Officer has been around obviously for a while, but we're seeing more, again, roles emerging around this as this is an area of interest. And then thinking about how we write to those particular keywords and topics and careabouts of our audience. This is just a sampling of CIO and InfoWorld articles. And you can see the flavor is different, right? So really important, again, coming back to that mindset of creating content that makes sense for the various stakeholders that you're trying to appeal to, right? And having a variety of content to do that. So we strive to do that at Foundry from an editorial standpoint. And I think the results coming out of that are when we think about the database and the reach that we're able to see. So This is, again, an of-the-moment slice of our database, and currently there are out of 300 million, so global scale. This is just a snapshot of 2 million plus data-driven decision makers. Over 1 million are in North America alone.
Right.
So that editorial connection, it gives us a seat at the table with decision makers who care about data. They have data and analytics projects. There's that trusted relationship. And then I love how this ties back to the slide that you took us through, which was around role and influence and
Right.
all the various areas. It really kind of resonates there, right? Because it's not just one job function. It's not just the CIO that cares about this,
Right.
You've got IT operations, we've got security, we have engineering. So a really wide breadth of job functions that, again, I think resonates and ties back to number of decision makers that are
I agree,
involved.
yeah. And one thing that I would add is I want to make sure people understand when we talk about content, we don't just talk about words on a page, because our events cover these issues in
Right.
great depth, where we have wonderful case studies and great speakers who are sharing their strategy and sharing their best practices.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a multi-channel strategy and really trying to reach folks where they're seeking that information, what form they're looking for that insight. So thinking about these next 3 slides are really just more around the newer product areas that where we're developing. And it's really, I think, a culmination of the past 3 years where Foundry has acquired some companies that we now have technology that really powers all of our solutions, a really much richer MarTech stack. And I'm going to start with Foundry Intent. So with Intent, it's not a new subject. Savvy marketers are using Intent to do a lot of things, right? Around their target accounts, around customers they're really trying to acquire. But no single source of intent is enough, and one signal is not enough, right? So we found in our research that it's an average of 32 signals and indicators along the decision-making process for an enterprise decision. So that's a lot of behavior to really track and look for. What we actually have now and have done here with Intent is we've developed not only account-based intent, but contact level. So this is brand new. There are demos that we're doing now for customers who
That's
are
impressive.
interested in seeing in real time. We're able to take your topical areas that you're interested in. We're able to take your accounts and show you in real time who's searching right now, who's actively looking, and in the buying process, and who they are. So that's a really exciting
impressive.
development for us. So building on Intent and thinking about the MarTech stack that we've been building and the technology that's powering all of our solutions, we joined forces with Selling Simplified Group earlier this year. And now together, we've expanded our database. We've become the global leader in providing quality first-party data on a global scale. And so this is a product that's called Visionaire. It is a digital, organic-based lead generation experience, and it delivers engaged leads for sales with additional insights and intelligence around target accounts. We call it engagement-based leads because the engagement with the content is guaranteed. So think about that. In traditional lead gen, of course you're sending out assets, but the ability to say, hey, we know that this person actually viewed this content, went back to it multiple times, shared it, engaged around it. There's real analytics, I think, tying to our subject matter here.
Yeah, we're drinking our
Right?
own
We're
champagne.
Exactly. I was going to say Kool-Aid, but I'll take champagne. And so how it works is very simple. A marketer supplies us with 3 to 7 assets, target criteria. Within 1 week, we're able to set up an interactive experience, and we begin promoting that content, and we work towards a guaranteed lead goal. And it's all privacy compliant. It's an experience that is, again, fully compliant, fully engaged, branded experience. and lots of analytics on the back end to prove what users are looking at.
That's a pretty powerful solution.
There is a demo here as well, very, very quick. I'm happy to take anyone through who's interested in seeing what that looks like firsthand. And then certainly, last but not least, in person. You talked about events earlier. Kind of a surreal moment. We're coming back to some face-to-face. So we have a whole virtual events calendar for 2022 that includes CIO summits as well as some executive virtual roundtables. We're bringing the CIO perspectives and CSO perspectives brands back. So in this iteration, it will be co-located events, so they'll be together, so you get a wider audience, wider area of topics that we can map to. New York, Chicago, and LA this fall. So super excited to be able to offer, again, face-to-face in the mix. And then when I think about field marketing and all those budgets, those areas that kind of went quiet for a while during the pandemic, we're now also able to conduct in-person executive dinners. And I think out of everything we think about data and analytics, this lends itself to those types of discussions where you can select a subtopic of that area and we can develop a discussion guide and have a really great opportunity to engage at that level. So exciting stuff, and then last but not least, well, where do we go next? We talked about requesting specific data cuts. So anything that anyone would like to see that's in the research that we conducted here. By the way, this study is much longer.
Oh yeah, much longer.
What we covered today, what you covered today, and so we can slice and dice that.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it by enterprise versus SMB, region, title. You can look at it by size of company. So there's lots of different ways that we can cut that data.
Excellent. And then we talked about the very quick demos that we can do on Foundry Intent to show you that account and contact level data, Visionaire. I come back to content again on developing a content strategy or even thinking about how I can align and develop content to the research that we talked about today, right?
Exactly, yeah.
We talked about democratizing data, right? And thinking about diving into some of those areas, that's a great opportunity to do that. And then, of course, finally, our events and face-to-face opportunities to just be back in person together. So we have a link there if you're interested in diving into any of these areas more deeply. I thank you, John, for
it's been a pleasure
for taking us through that, and thank you everyone for tuning in today. And we hope to see you next time. Cheers.
Thank you.